Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. In my daily show, I interview today's latest best-selling, buzziest, or underrated authors and story creators whose work I think is worth your time. As a bookstore owner, publisher, author, and obviously podcaster, I get a comprehensive look at everything that's coming out and spend my time curating the best books so you don't have to. Stay in the know, get insider insights, and connect with guests like I do every single day. For more information, go to zibbymedia.com and follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens. Emma Heming Willis is the author of The Unexpected Journey, Finding Strength, Hope, and Yourself on the Caregiving Path. Emma and I recorded this in person, which was super fun. Emma Heming Willis is a mother, stepmother, wife advocate, and co-founder of Make Time Wellness, a brand devoted to women's brain health. After her husband, Bruce Willis, was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, she became a passionate voice for care partners and families navigating neurodegenerative disease. Through her storytelling and advocacy, Emma hopes to help others feel less alone on the caregiving journey. This is her first book. Welcome, Emma. Thank you so much for coming on Totally Booked to talk about the unexpected journey, finding strength, hope, and yourself on the caregiving path. And it's your pub day, so congratulations.
It's my pub day. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on. And it's my pub day.
Yay!
Yes, yeah.
You've had quite a pub day. This is like not the normal pub day. Going on all the shows, all the rounds. How has that been for you?
It's definitely been a whirlwind, but I'm just so grateful for the interest in this book because I just feel like it's such an important topic. So I'm thrilled that, with just the rollout of this whole thing and I just want to get in as many hands as possible.
I think you're going to accomplish that. Okay. I have no fear. But the mission of your book is so giving, and you can tell from the way you tell about your love affair with Bruce Willis and your giving back and your mothering and all of that you could do this from such a good place. And that's not always the case. So this authenticity is it's so amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. It's hasn't been an easy journey, but when you are navigating this journey with someone who has dementia and it's someone that you love, you just want to just wrap your arms around them and just care for them as best as you can.
So one of my favorite parts of your story, and your story is very public, that Bruce Willis has frontotemporal dementia.
You can call it FTD. It's
FTD.
It doesn't roll off the tongue. Well.
And you have become an unexpected caregiver for a life that was not what you had planned. Nobody plans this, of course. And you've had to adapt in so many ways, and you've become a spokesperson on top of everything else, as if you didn't have enough on your plate. I mean, my gosh, you're like a glutton for punishment. But you have one scene where you've just spoken at a conference and you go backstage and you're like, this is so hard. Yeah. And you just cried with some other woman, I think Tracy or something. Yeah. Tell me about that and just the pressure on all sides.
Yeah, I had gone to this FTD conference, this research conference with scientists and clinicians, and this was in Amsterdam, and there was 750 people in attendance, and this event happens every 2 years. And what's so great about it is that it brings together all these researchers to just share sort of new findings in FTD, because there hasn't been a lot, but I'd flown out to this event to be able to be there. I was a keynote speaker. I was on a panel, and I was participating in the Caregivers Day just to be there with other caregivers. And it's a 4-day event. It's a lot. And I just remember on the third day, I went into, it was a breakout room, and this really incredible advocate, her name is Katie Brandt, was just giving this really incredible presentation. And she was speaking to new FTD caregivers. And I just remember being in that room. I was sitting in the back and I was just watching these new caregivers just hanging on to every single word that Katie was saying and just writing down note after note after note, because those early stages of FTD are so complicated and they are so hard. And I walked out of there just sobbing. And I met with another researcher, Tracy, and she was like, how are you doing? And I just completely broke down. And that was actually the end of I was supposed to stay one extra day. And I was like, I just can't do it. I think I've reached my max. And that was what that scene in the book was that it does become heavy. And I am navigating this in real time. And, I'm trying to advocate and learn how to do that. But I also have to make space for myself because I am human, having a very human experience. And I'm just trying to just be mindful and, just care for myself a little more. That maybe 4 days is maybe too much, but maybe now I know I can do 2 days. And, you just kind of learn to sort of know what your bandwidth is.
Well, throughout the book, you talk about taking care of yourself as one of the main priorities. In fact, that's one of the goals of the book, is to encourage caregivers to make time for them, eat right, do the things that they will survive longer and be able to care for the people that they love. So I feel like that is such a good example of you just walking the walk, which is really great.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to sort of, see what your limits are. And you don't know until you know. But yeah, that is the main theme of this book about, caregivers realizing that if they don't care for themselves, that it is going to be really hard to continue to care for their person the way they want to and to be able to sustain the journey. So I didn't know that early on. I definitely wasn't caring for myself. I was putting my husband's needs above mine, our children's needs. I mean, that's also what we do as women, right? And I had spoken to Bruce's neurologist, and he had told me about this statistic of caregivers passing before their loved one. And that really just shook me to my core because I had never heard that before. And it was my wake-up call. So my hope is that in this book, there are a couple of wake-up calls to caregivers so that they really can learn that caring for themselves isn't selfish, but it's self-preserving.
I love that. And actually, your kids became advocates for this as well, which I loved. And you wrote about this. There was one moment, let me just get it right, where one of your daughters said, "Mom, you have to get out and touch the grass," which I just loved.
Yeah.
And that you also you said, sometimes you feel badly about parenting through this crisis, because of course, how does anybody know? And you said, "I also let the girls know." Is it okay if I read from this?
Yeah, okay. Please.
I also let the girls know that I've never been a parent before, and the scenarios and situations I'm navigating as a parent and caregiver are all new. I feel like I'm making it all up as I go. That allows them to understand that I am human and I'm not on some parental pedestal, so I don't have that far to fall.
Yeah, that's true.
I love that.
That's true. Yeah, no, my girls can see when I am wound tight, and that was Evelyn, who was like, "Mom, please just get out and touch some grass. You need to get outside." And I'm like, "No, you're right. You're absolutely." And you need to be sometimes reminded. Unfortunately, so it was by my 11-year-old, but it was a healthy reminder. But yeah, I mean, they are doing the best they can in an impossible situation. And I have a chapter in there about parenting while caregiving. And I really love that chapter because it was an expert that I had worked with who helped me to just learn how to communicate with our daughters and be able to, bring them through in just the healthiest way. And, she really breaks things down so well about, when you tell them about a diagnosis, you wait for the questions that they might ask. And, you know your child better than anyone, but then you sort of can, the point is that it's important to be honest. And I think sometimes, my thought was I'm going to lie. I'm not going to say the whole truth. I'm going to try and figure, but that's actually not the way to do it. It's important to be able to be honest with them. So I really love that chapter because I just think it really, the expert in there who helped me so much just really laid it out in such a beautiful and understandable way.
Well, often when people talk about the sandwich generation, they don't talk about moms with young kids at home and preteens and going through all of that. I mean, I have 4 kids, and that's hard without caretaking for anybody else. So the added stress of that is just a lot. And you give really great advice also at the end about what to say to kids and how to help someone through this, which I thought was wonderful and a bit counterintuitive. You say, "Don't say you've got this. It can feel dismissive because honestly, I don't always feel like I do. Instead, what truly helps is hearing, I'm here for you no matter what. You're not alone in this. And I know this isn't easy, but you're showing up with so much strength and love. So that was advice to friends, but I think it applies everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You don't got it. Nobody has it. And you don't have to have that sort of false encouragement, like meet people where they are.
Yeah. And especially as caregivers, I mean, I think that we're also just like thrusted into this role with no knowledge. I mean, I didn't know anything about caregiving, let alone dementia. So you're really just kind of learning on the fly. And sometimes I don't know if I have it. I still don't know if I have it because things are constantly shifting and changing. So, even though that was for family and friends, yes, you want your friends just to be supportive and encouraging. I think that's so important while you're going through it.
Wow. And you have, of course, this added stress of being in a public family, having to talk about it, making the decision to talk about it, finding community, which you also talk a lot about in the book, which is beautiful, and how important it is for people to be on your side and know what's going on with you. But you face scrutiny in every action. And even in the book, you're like, maybe I shouldn't say this. I'm going to get in trouble for this. And then I saw you on GMA being like, I knew I was going to get in trouble for talking about this. And I was like, oh, she knew. She called that.
No, I already knew. I mean, I knew by putting some of the information into the book that, I was going to get judged, but it's okay. I think these are happening in families all the time where we have to make these really difficult decisions. And, caregivers get judged. They really do. And I think just seeing how some of what, we've put out there as a family to then see just like the scrutiny or judgment or whatever, I just think it's an interesting kind of like social experiment, right? Where you can just see that if we're being judged for doing something that was right and safe, for our family, imagine what it's like for others who are doing it too as well, and just trying to just making the best decisions that they can. But caregivers at the end of the day, they do get judged, and it's so sad because we're already judging ourselves. We're already hard on ourselves as caregivers, so it's really hard to hear it from others too.
Well, I like that you can own your decisions and be a model of doing what's right for you and your family, because it is hard. No one knows what they'll do under stress.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about loss because this is such a complicated thing to deal with. Mm-hmm. We're not good as people dealing with grief as it is. And as you say in the book, it's really an ambiguous loss where he's, slipping away and it's not, he's there, and you debate sort of with, I think it was with, who was it? Patty.
Oh, Dr. Pauline Boss,
yes.
who coined the term ambiguous loss.
Yes.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. How do you cope with the grief itself, right? You have the caretaking, you have the grief, you have the parenting, but this is something that you have to sort of come to terms with, and you have to mourn the life you thought you were going to have.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm consistently grieving. It's not that you grieve and you continue to move on. It's a process. And I feel like what's been so helpful for me is being able to talk about it, being able to connect with another person who's been on this journey, who understands what ambiguous loss is, to just understand just how tragic dementia is and what it takes from you and your person and your life. So being able to talk about the grief, I think, is really important for people, that it's so easy to want to just keep it inside. But what I tell my children, it's better out than in. It's really important to be open and to be, that's how you start to kind of process, you start to kind of process the grief, which is forever changing.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you.
What do you miss the most about the old version of Bruce?
He's my best friend. He, there's so much. I just, we were homebodies. We loved to lay in bed, watch movies, go for walks. We just loved each other's company, and I just miss that. Like I miss him and the companionship and our conversations and how funny, just how funny and quick-witted he was. There's a lot to miss. But, we're in a new phase of our lives, And it's not that it's okay, but there's still joy in our life. It just looks different than it did before. And getting a diagnosis of dementia is terrible. It's like the worst of the worst. But I think it's also important for people to know that there is still laughter, and there is still joy, and there are still new, beautiful memories to create. And that has really been what we do with Bruce today.
You had this one moment where your alarm went off and you couldn't remember the alarm code.
Yeah.
And you went downstairs to like turn it off and you're like, why is he not getting up? And then you were like, oh, so this is what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
He's not going to be, I know it's like sort of a funny example, but also just the little things in life are all changed. Everything
that you've been used to. I mean, Bruce was the one that kind of ran our whole house and did the things and organized all the stuff. And then slowly I realized, like, no, Wes, it's my turn. Like, it's my turn to step in and, run the ship of our lives, which was, a very, very different. But you know what? You realize that you're a lot more capable than you think. I think it's important to not sell ourselves short. I think that we can handle a lot that comes our way. And I've really seen that. It's something I think that caregivers should be proud of, because they take on so much and they have to change their whole angle of their life now to fit this new world that they're in. And I think that it's just not something to gloss over. I think it's really important to realize that we are definitely stronger than we think.
Well, you had advice to your kids, but I think it applies to you and really to anybody. It's great advice, but your kids have gotten the cards they've been dealt, and they will learn how to play them. It's simple, but it's so good.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, this is what's in front of us, and they will adapt, and you will adapt, and we all somehow find our way through this mess.
No, we do. And then that's one of the things that, like, I had heard over and over again, which just used to annoy me. I'm like, no, kids are they're so resilient. And I'm like, but I don't know that if you understand this situation that we're in, I don't know if they'll, bounce back from this. But you know what? Kids are really resilient. And us as adults and humans are actually really resilient. There are things that you think that you're not going to be able to get through, and we do. And we find a way just to continue to put one foot in front of the other. And I think that's incredible.
It is incredible. You wrote about the beginning of your relationship and how you were kind of standoffish. Not standoffish, that sounds bad, but you were like not so into it, the whole thing. And you kept saying no. And he was like quite persistent, almost in like too persistent of a way.
Yeah, he's very confident. Very confident Bruce. Yeah.
And he was like, I'm going to marry her. And you're like, I don't even want to go out on a date with you. Like, good luck. Good luck with that.
It took a while. It took a while to kind of get us to our first date, like a couple of years, actually. But I'm happy I went on that date with him.
Yeah. Do you ever look back knowing where life has taken you now and think like you would have done anything differently?
No, absolutely not. I wouldn't change a thing. I really wouldn't change a thing. I would change his diagnosis if I could. That would be something. But no, I mean, life is played out the way it is playing out. And I'm just trying to figure it out in real time, I guess.
So in addition to being an advocate and trying to raise money and do all these things to cure this and raising your kids and all that, now you've added a book, which is a huge deal in and of itself. It's like, what else? I'm like, what else is coming? So how did you fit in writing a book? Why did you decide to do this? Why now at this stage? Like, what was compelling you to do this?
I mean, I realized that when we walked out of our diagnosis appointment, we left with nothing. We didn't leave with a roadmap. We didn't leave with a piece of paper with some kind of like, here, you should call this person, that one, that, nothing. And, over time, I was able to put these experts and specialists around our family because I had some time to be able to do it. I had some resources and access, and there's many caregivers out there that do not have that. And I realized that I was like, there's just so much incredible like wisdom and insightful information that I was gaining from these experts that I had. And, I had to dig so deep for that. It wasn't like it was just there. It was that I really had to go and find it. And I knew I was holding on to something that was really valuable. And I knew I wanted to put it into a book and be able to share it with the next caregiver, because caregivers are not supported. I mean, they just are not. And I know that because I've been there and I've seen it, and I see what that looks like. So this was just a way for me to be able to pay it forward. And I have to say, like, that book wrote itself. I knew what I wanted to say. I knew my experts. I knew how valuable the things that they were teaching me. And I hate to say it, it wasn't a hard thing to write. Does that sound crazy?
Okay.
No,
No,
does that
that's
sound crazy?
great.
It really, there no part in that process of putting that book together was it difficult. Like, it just flowed.
And now that you're doing all this publicity and you're going to have to do all this stuff for the book, you don't ever feel like, why did I step into this?
I literally say that all the time. I'm like, what have I gotten myself into? I literally just wanted to write a book, a roadmap that would help someone else. I didn't realize that there was a whole song and dance that goes along with it. And I was like, no, the book will just let it come out and like let it speak for itself, and it'll do what it's going to do. No, I didn't realize that that's not what you do. So anytime I'm about to go do something, I'm like, what have I gotten myself into? Because public speaking is just so hard for me. It's not my favorite thing, but I just realized that I just have to, my Bruce would always tell me, Emma, you got to get out of your own way. And this is me getting out of my own way, because I know that this book will help someone else, because it has helped me. I still refer to it. I'm still looking in it. I'll open it up and be like, oh yeah, I should need to revisit that. I haven't been doing that. I need to, I need these constant reminders as well.
Well, you do pack in so much great information and self-care, care for others. You have little worksheets. I mean, it's quite a user-friendly guide for people who are probably already just so frayed and don't have the bandwidth for a lot. And you wrote it in such an accessible way that it just felt like someone was reaching out a hand.
I feel like caregivers are like, they're so fatigued, right? Like, and I felt like it was important for me to be able just to tell them some things so that they don't have to like figure it all out all the time. Because sometimes that's all I want. I'm like, can someone please just tell me what to do? Like, I'm sick of making the decisions. So I wanted just to be able to kind of take that decision making away from the caregiver, so that it's there, so they can just refer to it and be like, oh, okay, this is what I should do, or this is how I should ask, or this is how I get support, or whatever that might be. I just wanted to make it accessible, tangible, actionable.
And in terms of making decisions, I know every so often there are clips of your family together or your blended family or whatever. How do you decide what to post? I know this is sort of a quite specific question, but as somebody who's like on social media all the time thinking about this, how do you decide like what's okay to post about Bruce now versus before? What would he want? Who decides that? Who's in charge of that?
I think it's whoever posts. It's very hard I think we all have our own ideas. I have mine, and everyone else has theirs. And
what are yours?
What are mine? I think I just always want my husband to look great. I think for me, what's important right now, it's really about this book, and it's really about caring for the caregiver. And, if obviously the story comes from Bruce, that is how I am here. But again, like, I think it's even bigger than him or me. I mean, this is like a caregiving journey that is happening to 63 million caregivers in, the United States, 11 million of which are caregivers to someone with dementia. And I just try to take the focus as much as I can away from him, just to be able to be like what this book is and what this book isn't. This book is not a memoir. It is not a tell-all. It's a book that hopefully people will see parts of my story and be able to connect to it, but also be able to find the support that they need to be able to sustain the journey.
That was a very good pivot away from that specific question. You're very good.
I know. You're the first one to ask me that. It's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
That was a good pivot, though, right?
That was a good pivot.
You're not going to put this on, right?
I don't know. That was my favorite part. So when you think about your next part of life with the craziness of the book and everything else. Like give me an example. How are you taking care of you? Like, I know there are things here and you're like meditate sometimes and do this and go for walks and exercise and all that. But like on a day like today, like what are you going to do? Just collapse? You watch TV? Like what are some of your guilty pleasures when you're fried?
Oh, guilty, but watching just some TV, putting on Netflix, getting into bed with like a snack. That's like a guilty pleasure, I think, for me. Yeah, it just depends. For me right now, my self-care is, as crazy as this sounds, is advocating, is raising awareness. For me, that is sort of what really like gives me hope. It really kind of changes this dark narrative that I also have in my head too.
Yeah.
It just steers me away from that. So I can also have purpose and meaning in my life, which wasn't there. It didn't feel like it was there for a long time when Bruce was diagnosed. So right now, like I'm going into these rooms now with other caregivers. I'm able to connect with them. And that for me is just like, that is my self-care. It's like connection. I lived in isolation for so long. There was so many smoke and mirrors that I was putting up to try and, protect Bruce and our family. And I'm like, I'm over it.
Yeah.
I'm over it. So
you had such a good line about that. You said, we are only as sick as our secrets.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's true. I think it's just been so freeing to be able just to be in our truth of what is. And that helps me too. Like it is so helpful and important for me to also have a community. It's okay for me to be able to share my story, even though it might be, people might judge me, criticize or whatever, but there is also so much love and support out there as well. So that is who that is who I'm speaking to. Those are the connections that I'm making. That is how I'm caring for myself now in this journey versus where I was before, which was dark. It was a dark place.
And just, I don't want to keep you for too long. I'm sure you're so tired, but you talked about taking your girls to Japan and how you flashed back a little bit to when you were on the plane when you were young.
Yeah.
And you watched Armageddon and bawled watching your future husband, little did you know.
I know.
And then you came back again with them. Just like talk about that full circle moment.
Yeah. So when one of my first modeling, like my bigger modeling jobs was a contract that I got to go to Japan for a month. And like, those were the times where you would be on a plane, it was an economy. And like, remember we all shared like one television, like in the aisle.
Yeah.
So you'd all put your little things on and like everyone's watching the same movie, like up in the aisle. Anyway, so Armageddon was on. And I remember just like being so into this movie and crying and everyone's crying next to you on the movie, watching this whole thing. And I was going to Japan. And then, that was just one of my favorite places. And Bruce and I said, one day we're going to take the kids back. We're going to go. He loved Japan. We had this whole idea of where we would go, the things that we would do. And that was a trip that the girls and I did last year. And, it was a beautiful trip. Wasn't the trip that it was supposed to be. We were supposed to have Bruce there with us, but I was able to take the girls. They love being in Japan. They're of the age now where they can like appreciate the culture and the food. And so it was a reimagined trip, a different type of trip, but it was still important. And I have a photo album that I made. I pulled those pictures off the cloud and like put them into a photo album of, like special places and things that I'm doing with the girls that, was supposed to be with Bruce. But this is the world that we're navigating right now.
And is there anything you would say to yourself sitting there watching the big screen on the plane? Any advice you'd give to her?
Just have some grace, like just that you're going to be okay. I move through the world in so much fear and anxiety and, just to embrace life, have fun. Life is just goes by in a blink of an eye, and things can change so quickly. So I just think that I'm just trying to like enjoy things more, like taking these trips with the girls. It's so easy for us to just say like, oh, we'll do it another time, or we'll do it next year, or we'll do it. No, I'm like, when we have the opportunity, we're going. We're traveling, we're whatever it might be, because that's what Bruce would want. He would want us to just be in the world, experiencing the world, and being able to show the girls the world is, it's such a privilege, such a beautiful thing that I'm able to do with them.
And what would he say to you today, seeing you in your element?
He'd be so proud. I think he would be so proud. He was always my biggest cheerleader, always trying to just like get me out there. And, I think he'd be really proud of what I'm doing and how I'm using my voice, because he also believed in that too. The importance of, speaking for people that are unseen and to be able to do good. And I think he would be proud of that.
I'm sure he would. I'm so glad you have so many in your circle who are so proud of you, and now the entire world who gets to hear your story. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to help others when it's hard enough to take care of yourself, I'm sure. So this is such an act of generosity, and I hope it will come back to you in spades.
Thank you so much. I don't know how you just did this whole interview without any notes. How did you do that?
I'm just that good. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you loved the show, tell a friend, leave a review, follow me on Instagram @ZibbyOwens, and spread the word. Thanks so much. Oh, and buy the books.